Okay, so we will be going to start this session. You guys, like you have shared, you are looking my screen, right? You are able to see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let me, as I have shared the screen for Angular documentation, right? So Angular is like before starting into Angular, like we will be going to learn like what's Angular and why we are actually been doing this. So since most of the developers know about it, like what's the Angular, how SPAs work. So Angular is basically a front-end framework which is actually been founded and maintained by Google, right? So it's an open source framework for front end, like developing your front end applications. So Angular is for developing your SPAs, which is single page application. So it follows the reusable kind of constraint, like where you can develop your reusable components, and we have the modular approach as well. Like assuming taking an example, like our application will have a payments integration, and our application will have some kind of a dashboard screens, multiple. Maybe we have also a chat mechanism in our application. So all of them will be combined to like combined in terms of module to form an application, right? So in Angular, the best thing about Angular is, since it's a framework, so like the enterprise projects, those are actually being built over this framework, Angular framework. And like we have a vast community for this Angular development, right? So in Angular development, like this is actually kind of an enterprise single page application concept, so where you can create your projects and all. So we have like if we will going to take a look on like what's the platform, like how this actually Angular works. So Angular is, earlier when Angular started, so it was actually been on the JavaScript side, right? So JavaScript side means like people were like at that time JavaScript, like vanilla JavaScript and those kind of concept, scoping mechanism and all, earlier than AngularJS. So they have updated their whole ecosystem towards TypeScript and more kind of a OOP system, right? OOP means like object oriented programming. So object oriented programming were actually, as you also know, like we have certain pillars for our OOP concepts. So in terms of developing your application on principles of object oriented programming, so we have inheritance, we have polymorphism kind of things. So in terms of achieving those object oriented programming concepts, so we are actually in Angular, so they are using TypeScript is a programming language. So it's kind of more enhanced version of your JavaScript. So with typing mechanisms, with other other more efficient things which are actually been which are helping us to do the object oriented concepts in our Angular applications, right? So then from Angular 2 onwards, so the Angular is following the TypeScript, using TypeScript for developing the applications. So in TypeScript we can create enums, we can add types to our variables. Look, like however on AngularJS, when it was Angular 1 AngularJS, so we don't have those mechanisms, because at that time Angular were not on TypeScript mechanism, so they were using AngularJS, right?
Sounds good.
Okay, so then after as I will also share you, like in Angular actually we have multiple concepts. So this is how actually if I can share with you, so this is how on Angular documentation is also mentioned. So this is the main simple mechanism of creating your component, right? So this is forms as Angular component. However, when we are creating, actually in Angular we have a CLI, command line interface, so in which actually we can create our services. Actually the main paradigm I must share with you here is, like in Angular we have components, and in Angular we have modules, we have services, we have other extra things as well, but these are the key things which we have in Angular, right? So for components, so multiple components together forms a module, right? So as I have taken an example of like users module. So inside users module we have a listing component, we have a detail page component, we have a pop-up component. So all those components found together and forms a users module. I will also share with you like how we can create module, how we can create component, and like this is actually the main behavior. Like in components we can create in as I already shared, like we are using TypeScript here. So we are using decorator concept here in Angular. So this is actually forms this actually represents a component with @ right? So this is a component. So this component is being imported from Angular core. Angular core is actually the main Angular. So from where we can actually import services, components, and all things, right? So this is how we can form a component. So because this is on a snippet site, so they have shared component with like template as well. But on the if we are generating component from Angular CLI means Angular command line interface. So when we install Angular, so like it's a very simple. I will also share those steps as well. But for this Angular component, like as you can see here, we have a selector, right? So like if I want to use this component in some other main page or kind of other thing, so I can use this selector this way in terms of like how we have a div tag and other HTML element tags. So I can use this selector of a component, and I can use it everywhere in the application, so that component will be reflecting there. Okay.
Sounds good.
So this is the actually concept of component. And modules, as I already shared, I will also share like how we can create module, and what's actually with this mechanism, actually we can also create routing in our Angular application as well. Routing means like routing will be going to use for your navigation purposes. So navigation purposes means like if you are on home page, you want to navigate on about us page or kind of a contact us page. So like we have Angular router, right? So this is how we have imported this core imported from we are actually importing component from Angular core, right? So when we will be going to import router here, so when we are going to use router, so we can have to import router as well from Angular. Okay, I will also show you that thing as well. So this is how actually we can create component, and like that's kind of like assuming we have a tag, and we want to assign a variable ID. If we have this ID in a variable, so we can add these square braces, so that it will take this say hello world ID as a variable, right? So this is also the mechanism in Angular. And also like assuming that font color is in variable we have, so we can do this kind of style dot color with the square braces, so it will get this font color in terms of variable. So this is how we can. And let me share with you like what's the Angular CLI. Angular CLI is basically a command line interface through which they have exposed some commands. So they have written some like explicit information about behind that one. So if we type this ngGenerate, so assuming that if I want to generate a component, so I will write ngGenerate C or component, or after that component name, so it will going to generate your Angular component. I will share with you for like how we can create component, how we can create module, how we can add router, and some few more detailed information I want to share here before going into the code base. So is for Angular router I already shared. So this is an advanced like client side navigation. Like if I want to perform navigation from one page to another page, so then we can use Angular router. And we have lazy loading and nested routes component path. So those are actually the advanced topics we have in Angular router, right? We will going to cover those. Also for Angular forms, like as we have multiple dashboards, you guys have also worked on it. So in multiple applications, we are actually been dealing with forms. So here in Angular, we have very powerful Angular forms library from Angular, like the mechanism for using forms. So we have two types of form mechanisms in Angular. So one is the reactive forms, and one are the model-based form, template-driven forms. I will also share those things as well. So, and what's the Angular HTTP client is basically also from Angular supported pre-built-in thing. So that's for HTTP client is basically a class for doing your API integration. Like if you want to get some data from backend, so you can have to import your HTTP client module. So once you will be going to import that, so then after you can able to use this HTTP client class. So then after you can use all HTTP verbs like http.get or http.post and doing those API integrations. So this Angular animations is also the like animation based on state provided by Angular. Angular PWA means progressive web application. So this is also the advanced topic. We will be going to cover that one. So this is actually the main concepts behind this one. Let me share my code base so that I can give you the overview of like how we can create Angular applications and how we can doing those. So when we are going to go in docs, so here actually we can see how we can install our Angular application. So step one is basically to identify which of the node, since it's Node.js is actually a runtime environment developed with JavaScript. So Node.js is in JavaScript runtime. So with that actually, since Angular is also written with JavaScript, so it actually required Node.js runtime to run your Angular applications. So before installing Angular, so your system, your laptop or machine must have Node.js installed. So like for that one, you simply have to open your terminal, right? So your terminal, and inside your terminal, you have to see which Node version you have installed. So this is actually the command through which you can check it out. Okay, you are able to see the screen, right?
Right.
Okay, so here we have this node version. So you can see here we have I have Angular version 18 installed, since my Angular is Angular 16 or 15 maybe installed. Okay, here you can see it. So if you are if you don't have this Node.js installed in your machine, so through command line you can go to your Google browser and say like Node.js. Right, so here we have the download mechanism. So we have multiple environments, so it depends on like which Angular version you are using. So currently we have Angular 16 version 16 we have. So if like with respect to that, you have to actually install your Node.js version. So after installing that, actually it's quite simple. So you can, after installing that one, so you only have to run this npm install Angular CLI command. So which will be going to install the Angular development environment in your what I can say in your machine, right? So from a terminal you can go and you can install like Angular install this -g represent to global. So it will be, let me show you on a terminal. So Angular is also installed in my machine. So if I can show you with ng version. So with this actually, this is a command for recognizing your which Angular version you have installed in your machine. So you can see here it says Angular CLI, means Angular command line interface, which is installed as v13, right? And it requires Node 18. Okay, so this is actually unsupported because I was also using Angular 16 earlier, so we have to downgrade this one as well, right? So this is how you can see it, right?
Perfect.
Yeah. So since my machine have Angular installed, so I will show you the application. So it will like share. Let me share my code base as well. Okay. Okay, so before directly going into the components and all other things, so let me first go through like what like how the Angular structure look like, right? So when we create Angular application, so I will also share with you like what's the command. So it's pretty simple command. So we have to write ng new and application name. This is actually the command through which you can install your Angular. You can start your brand new application with Angular, right? Ng new application name. It's also mentioned in your docs of Angular. I will also show that one to you. Before that, actually, I want to share the basic information like how the Angular structure look like. So in Angular application, basically, so this is the boilerplate. Like once you will be creating your Angular application, so it will have some directories and some commands, right? So in the like let's start with very first. So these are the node modules. So node modules are node modules are actually come from your dependencies, whatever the required dependencies we have. So it actually installs from this one, package.json. Package.json file is the main file of your JavaScript libraries or frameworks. Either you are working on React or Angular application. So this is a very first file, package.json, in which actually your application version and your name of the application and your scripts. This scripts represent to your running of your Angular applications, because it's running on Node.js runtime. So Angular had exposed these ngserve, ngbuild commands, but behind that the scenario is actually been working in terms of transpilation, code transpilation, because our browsers don't understand TypeScript and JavaScript ECMAScript 6, right? ECMAScript versions. So when we do ngserve or like ngbuild, so the whole code of this Angular, so it will be going to transpile through a JavaScript engine. Then it will be exposed to the browser in terms of vanilla JavaScript, so that browsers can understand it. So this package.json actually concludes the libraries which we are using in our application. So dependencies, I means. So we have, you can see here, we have a dependencies object in which it says like which Angular animations version we are using, what's the Angular compiler we are using, what's the Angular forms version we are using. And this RxJs is a reactive JavaScript library. So it's actually been very useful in our Angular application. So it comes by default with Angular basic structure, right? So these are the dependencies we have, and these dev dependencies are for the dev environment. So it represents your Angular compiler version, and Jasmine and Karma are the testing environment, testing mechanism coverage for your for writing your test cases. If you want to develop your Angular application with TDD approach, with test-driven development, so Jasmine and Karma are the things through which you can write your test cases and run your application, right? So also, as I already shared, like Angular is using the TypeScript as a programming language. So TypeScript here you can see it comes by default with Angular, right? So when we start Angular applications. So this was actually for the package.json file we have covered. So this is actually the dependencies file. It consists of the dependencies which we are using, like our Angular application is dependent on. So we have also another tsconfig.json file. So since we are using TypeScript in Angular, so we have certain rules which are defined as TypeScript. So it's using ES 2017. So modular approach are from ES 2020. So these are the details which actually come for the TypeScript things. Okay, so TypeScript will going to read this config file before running this Angular application. Also, we have this Karma config. So at the moment, like the application I have, so I didn't written the test cases inside it, but this is actually the basic like the basic file which comes when we create our new application from scratch. And also the angular.json, it's also the important file. So I will also cover this one as in the basic. So this angular.json actually reflects your project related things. Like project related things means your output files, your polyfills, like how your Angular architecture is working, what are the styles, the basic style, not the basics, but what are the dependent styles and dependent scripts which we are using in our applications, what's actually the minimum size for your components, styling files. So these are actually the things which those are actually written here, mentioned here in your angular.json file. So this is a configuration file and main entry gate for your Angular application. So when Angular start running, so it will read this angular.json file first, to see like on our Angular application which kind of component mechanism styling we are using, either Sass or CSS, or either our Angular application is following a strict mechanism for JavaScripts, what is actually the source root for our Angular application. So these are the main things. So for building mechanisms, like when user run ng build, so what will be where the index.html file go, where will the CSS files went. So these are actually the things which are written in angular.json file, right? So also, yeah, also the src directory we have. So src directory is the main directory for our Angular application. So inside which we have throughout the application, we have assets, we have the base CSS file for the parenting purposes, we have index.html file right here. So in Angular application we have app root, right? App dash root means like it will be going to navigate your multiple modules and inside components with it. So app root is actually been reflecting your main application. So in app dash root, what will be going to come? So inside application folder you can see here. So if you can go inside app.component.ts, you can see here. So this is app root. So as I already shared, this is a component based framework. So we are using reusable components here. So you can see here for the application component, so the selector is app dash root, right? So this app dash root is been used here. So that means app.module is actually the entry point for your Angular applications, right? And from here your Angular application starts. So let me share kind of like inside the app. So these directories, components, core, shared, these are created by me, because when you start your Angular application from scratch, so these files will not come, right? So these files.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to know about the environments.
Okay, yeah. So here in environments also, this file is actually this directory will be come when you start your Angular application. So these two files actually come into your picture here in the project. So environment means like this environment.ts, by default environment.ts, it will be going to use for your development and testing environments, right? So that's what actually production is false here, right? So inside environment.prod.ts, so production flag is true. So when you will be going to build your application from package.json file, you can see here we are building this one, right? ng build command. So when we build for prod, that means ng build --prod. So the command for building your application for prod is prod, this one, right? This one, through which we can build our production application. So then, assuming that we have this environment.prod.ts, right? So environment.prod.ts. So assuming that we have a variable here, I can say API
URL, whatever. Yeah.
Base URL.
Right. So yeah, I got it. So if I have a staging environment, so I have to add that file here, and then I have to set production to false.
Exactly.
And then and I have to run ng build dash state.
Exactly.
I got it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So then after, like, what we can do is, like, assuming that this is the API base URL, right? So API www.sample.com/environment prod, right? So this way. So and the same API base URL we have for this environment as well.
Yeah, that's localhost something.
Exactly. So this is what actually now inside our components we are using the we are exporting this environment file simply. But what it will do, so inside angular.json file, so you can see here ng build replaces environment.ts with environment.prod.ts. The list of file replacement can be found in angular.json. So if you can go in angular.json, so you can see here there will be some kind of, okay, you can see here, right? So This is the file replacement mechanism. So file replacement mechanism for production, it's written over, right? You can see here for production. So it will be going to replace your environment.ts file with environment.prod.ts. So now, assuming that we are actually we are using API based URL for from this environment file, and we are building our application for dev and production using CI/CD pipelines. So the API will automatically be changed in terms of ng build command. Got my point?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
I got it.
Okay, perfect. So this was actually the behavior for this environment files. Inside this polyfills actually, so we have these polyfills. You can add extra polyfills like before, because Angular is using zone.js, so zone is actually being used for multiple listeners for your browser compatibility things. So this is kind of a polyfills.ts file. But this is the main TS. Main TS is actually the entry gate for your Angular application, and it's been using your application module, bootstrap module, your app module. That means app module is your starting entry gate for your Angular application, right? So here, like currently we have Angular version 16 concept, so in which actually the module mechanism is optional. So we can create standalone components, and then inside main.ts we will be going to change app component or kind of the whatever the component we have from start. So that's kind of a head concept. So I will share with you in detail when we will be arising on that. Okay. So now inside this, as you see here, so we have app.module. We have also app.routing module as well. So here app.routing module. So when we are creating any component, so we are actually going to call that we are actually using that component, importing that component in our app.module. And app.routing module is for your routing your application, like when user go on to parent, when user go on to /payment, so it will navigate to parent component. So these are the components which are developed. I can also shows those things as well. Yeah. Right. So now, like I can share you with schematic like how we can create components here. Like assuming that on components I am doing right click and I'm going in terminal here. So let me clear this out, and I'm writing like ng generate module sample test, right? So now inside this components folder, this new module will be going to create it, and I also want routing in my module, so I will do --routing, right? So you can see here now sample test module is being developed here. Like it actually came here. So sample test module is here, right? And we have also the routing file. We have also routing file for this module as well, right? So for correspondent component like sample test component A, sample test component B, so those will be going to like use as child here in inside the routes. Okay. I will also show those things here as well. So now for now we are closing it. So as we have like as you can see like how we can create module. So I'm going now inside this module sample test. I'm doing right click here. Yeah, I'm going open in terminal. I can do ng generate component sample test A. Okay, so this is now the sample test A component which is being developed here, and you can see here if I'm opening this sample test module, so this component which we have created, so it's been automatically imported in your module because we have opened this sample test module in our terminal and we are creating component inside that, so this import is being doing automatically. Okay, got my point?
Yep.
Yes. So this is how we can create components. So also sample test where we are. So assuming that I'm also creating component like sample test B. Okay. So this is how we can create components. We can also and inside this module, since you can see sample test, we have module, right? But we don't have root component where we can use this sample test A and sample test B. So what I simply say, so with the same name we have module, this sample test. So I will create the component for it as well. So what I can do now, I can go into the directory of it and I can keep those files, and I'm dragging these files out on the level of module. Okay, I have did this one, and since I have moved it to root, I have to remove this one. Now if you can see sample test module is deleting this empty folder from here. Now you can see sample test module. You can see here we have a module inside which we have a routing as well, routing mechanisms as well, and we have some kind of child components, like we have a correspondent components as well where we can use those inside it. Now how this module is being created, but on the application, if I'm running this application, let me do it. If I'm doing npm start is actually been command for running your Angular application. However, you can run with ngserve as well. As I shared with you the Angular version, which like node v18. So it's not normalized with our Angular version of Angular 13. So that's why this error is coming. So we have a simple command which we have to run for resolving this one. So this is the command through which we can do it. I will downgrade my Node.js version so that it will be going to hidden. But normally when you do ngserve, so it will going to start your Angular application on this URL. So right. So now let me do this way: half a screen for code and half a screen for browser. But no, it will be going to be kind of a stretchy position. Let me go onto the browser, and I'm running this Angular 4200. When I'm going on Angular 4200/users, right? So you can see here it will be going to load users because that's a separate module. It's a separate component. So now we have created the component with like what we have created with sample test. But as you already know, we don't have defined the navigation for that module. So that's why actually we can't run it. So if we are running it, you can see if I'm running it sample-test this way, it will not going to open any component. It will rather than going on main screen with the empty. So if we reload that, so it's that means like the navigation is not defined. Okay. Now for the navigation purposes, inside the app module, the module we have created, we have to import that one, right? So in my case, I have created this one, and you can see here products is also the module here, right? So what I'm doing here is like inside app.routing file. So you can see here products, users. So these are the lazy loading route. So this is the advanced topic we will be going to cover. So the module which we will be going to create, so we have to import it here. Like now we have created sample test module. So we'll be going to import it here. Right, this way, sample test, right? This is a way of importing it. And inside the imports array, I have to import this module to let my app know like I have one more module which I want to use inside my application. So this is a way, because app.module is the entry gate, since I have also shown that one to you in main.ts file. So because platform browser is actually been rendering your, like, assigning this app.module to your application, like, since it's an entry gate for your Angular application. So it's my responsibility when I'm creating a new module. So first thing I have to do is I have to go towards app.module, and I can list my module there, right? So like currently, as we are doing this import line by line here, so assuming that your application have 500 or like 600 modules, so this is actually a bit messy. So I will share some best practices in future sessions as well. Okay, so for now, you can see sample test module is being created, and we have listed that in imports array, right? So in imports array, we have listed it. So now in app.routing module, what we have to do is, like, whatever the first component we have, so that's your, this one, sample test component. So I can go in my routing file, and I'm writing it here, like, in terms of what I can do is like sample test component, this one, right? So with sample test component, I'm also doing this one for defining my new route, my new path, for so that I can assign it to my browser. So that's actually sample test component. I can do, like, this is the path which I want to, like, assuming that I want to open the browser with like some kind of URL or some kind of like SEO specialist or kind of whatever the URL we can write here. So it will be going to open or navigate this sample test component. So I'm writing it here like simple test, right? Sample test. So this is a new route we have defined here. So if I'm saving my Angular application, and if I'm going to my browser and I'm saying sample test, so you can see here this component started working. This module started working. Okay. So
right.
so in this sample test, so here we have
what we have done here so far. So we created modules, then we created components, and then we created
routing for it.
Yeah, then we create routing, and then in an app.module file, we basically added that new component in there, and then after that, we added that new component in routing.module, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like we did first module, component, routing, and then in the app.module, added this new component in the routing. So this part I understand. So if you But how does app root, I mean the main component work?
Which one?
So the main one, so the one we discussed earlier, app root in index.html file.
App root
Yeah.
is actually app root was actually being designed by Angular system. So yeah, so that's actually the entry gate, and that's working in terms of this way. Inside the main.ts, as you can see here, so we have listed this app.module. Right, like this
Right.
is the entry gate. If you want to like don't use this app.module, and you want to create your own module, and you want to use that one as your entry gate, so you can simply go it here, import your that module, and you can use it that module. That's very simple. Got my point?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's actually the way we can do it. Also, this is actually the way here for creating your sample module and component. So if I'm going it here now, so like assuming that now sample test started working, right? So now I want to use this sample test A. So this is actually the selector for this component. So if I'm opening this one, right, and inside the sample test component, this is actually my main component where simple test works, which has actually been running on browser. But now if I want to use my child component here, simple test A, so it says as your Angular component. Okay, so that's actually being used here, simple test A. Is that used inside our routing file? Okay, so let me share with you. Okay, so now in my sample test routing file, I can add some more paths for my child components. Okay, so here if I'm like adding a path, right, so I'm saying it like child A, right, and it will be going to reflect a component like we have to share the component for that one component for my child component. For my child, so child A, so it's like sample test A component, right? So this is same way you can also use for our child component B. You can I totally understand like there will be going to be a more like these things will be in a very different session, like in separate sessions I will also cover those information, but as this is a session which where I want to cover Angular basics as well, so it's my responsibility to share here as well, but I also cover these things separately so that you can have a grip on your navigation part as well, so don't worry about
Sounds
it.
good.
Yep. So this is a child B. So here I can do simply uh, sample test. So if I'm selecting this one, so automatically import is also been done, and this child is also being created, right? So if I'm going on this sample test browse, like sample test slash child dash A. Okay, so let me do. Inside my sample test, so these, okay, so I have to do one thing. I have to import my sample test component as well. So this is kind of a child level navigation, so I will share that one separately in other session, right? So that's like you will these things will be going above your head then, like that's kind of a very mixture for importing your module. Yeah, so we will cover it in a separate session as well. So this is how actually when we create component, so you also recognize that inside component we have 4 files. So one is your HTML file where you can write your markup, and this style will be going to your where we can write styles for that component respectively. And we have this TypeScript file as well, where we can create functions, where we can define variables and all. So the life cycle for this Angular also. So before ending with this session, I must share the life cycle for Angular. So when our component will be mounted, like as we did a navigation part, so when user land on that screen, so first this constructor will be going to run. So this constructor will be going to run very first time before this ng on it.
Can we do one thing?
Yeah.
Can you make me a favor and put breakpoints in there and run the application or something, so that we can just go and take a look in real time?
Okay, sure.
That's very important for me. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. No worries. Okay, let me share here. So we can go into the inspect, right? So inside the inspect we have this console. Let me zoom it a bit. Okay. So in Angular, as I'm on this one sample test A component, so I'm doing a log mechanism here so that we can see which is firstly running. So this, okay, so here we can write constructor. Okay, so this means it will show like which component actually started. The constructor will be going to start very first before going into, sorry, I'm doing it on sample A component since it's not the desired place. So you have to do that on sample test. Sample test itself means this parent component, sample test component.ts, this one. So this constructor is going to run very first time, and here in ng on in it, so that will be going to run very second time. That means here we can do API calls, assuming that we have a list, we are actually being list. So I will also show you the users component as well, how the API integration is actually been doing, so that you can understand. We have also ng on changes and ng after view in it as well. Ng on changes will be going to run when when we have some changes on that page, like that's a change detection strategy. And ng after view in it is also another lifecycle method. So that actually runs when your UI is being loaded in your DOM. So that's actually the advanced things we will also cover in the next sessions. So here, if I'm saving my application, so you can see here in the browser on the left side, so you can see first constructor is coming, right? So constructor is coming first, then ng on init is coming. So in constructor, what we are doing is, let me show you in the users component and other components so that you can have an idea. All right, so let me close them out. So inside src, inside app, we have these components. So if I can go inside users, so you can see users listing, right? So here you can see inside users listing, if I can go inside ts file, so you can see we have these variables created, listing for the listing purposes, which we will be getting from API call. User will be going to be a selected user, which will be going to pass data from our listing component to detail component. So this is how we can this router, as I discussed earlier. So this router is being imported from Angular router here, and we have created a constructor for it here. Right now we can do navigation purposes below. I will also share you below. So you can see here ng on init, we are being consuming an API call from the server. We are actually been getting the list of users so that we can render it on our screen. So this get users is written in our user service. So this is a service. We can also create service, as we have created modules, we have created components, and we have created services. We can create service as well. So here you can see this is the users module, and inside module we have a user service as well on the root. And we have written a get users method here where we are using this HTTP client class, so through which we are consuming this get verb, and inside this endpoint we are passing the URL, so it's been loading the list of users. So what we are getting the response from server, so we are giving that in listing part, listing array. So and that listing is being doing with here, this is ng4 is a director, like this ng4 is a structural directive we have from Angular to iterate your items on your UI. So this ng4 is like as this listing, which actually come from backend API. So this is the thing where we have. So this get users listing, it's being used here on ng on init. That means when user lands on user listing screen, so this API call will be going to run very firstly. So that will fetch a list of users, and whatever the list coming from backend, so that's been assigned to listing variable, listing array. And that listing array, we are doing the iteration part, listing.data. Here we are getting the array of users, and we are being iterating them in terms of their avatar, in terms of their first name. These are actually the respected keys which we are getting for every object of user from the backend API call. So this is how this users is showing you the information. Here you can see in the logs, so this is the API response. So here in data we have user's avatar, user email, user first name, and user last name. So here we have accumulated throughout the information on our browser screen. Got my point?
Sorry, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So these are actually the very the overview of Angular, like how it works, how we can conclude things, like what's the navigation, how we can create components, how we can create modules. So since we have to go through all of them step by step, since we have a lot of things to cover, like I don't know how much you have Angular experience at the moment, so we will be going to learn those things in deep.